Welcome to Lift Your Story podcast with guest Shaily, Hakimian, social media Sherpa. Hi everyone, I'm Lori-Ann. I am that gal from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, and I am with.
I am that guy. I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas. Welcome to our Lift Your Story podcast.
In this episode, we welcome Shaily Hakimian, and she is a social media Sherpa. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. You all do something amazing that I love to cheer on my clients for, is sharing their stories. So I'm glad to be a part of this and be able to share mine.
Great. So you got your start in high school on MySpace.
Yes. Remember MySpace. What a joy. Yes. So yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, how you got your start, and how you got to where you are today.
So this is so weird. So I do social media. That's my main world, but there's some like weird social things that kind of led me to this path where MySpace comes into play. I was a kid that was teased. I was bullied. I was pulled out for extra help. Kids didn't always see me as smart. I was also the kid that like nobody wanted to partner with when it came to like those pick your partner activities in school. Do you remember those, right? Mm-hmm. They sucked. And so it was really hard to make friends. All of middle school, I spent time trying to learn social skills because I was like, I need to have friends. But what really helped me and where I really like unlocked my relationship building skills was on the internet, and specifically on MySpace. It's like all of the things I needed to make friends, like the internet made it easier. And the way it did is I'm going to share my weird hobby with you all here. Ready for it? I do something where I play like online versions of reality competition shows. Have you heard of Survivor and Big Brother?
Yeah.
Right. So we're like super nerds that like play our own hosted versions of it. Like it was nuts. And so finally, as a kid, I was like, as a 14-year-old, I found people that liked the same weird things that I did. And so one thing led to another. I realized there was a community of us and we needed a home. And one of the social media jobs nowadays that exists is called community manager. And I was like, very early community manager. I created a community for all of us where I made sure people were engaged, that they were supported, that they could talk out their feelings, whatever it was. And this was great. I made so many best friends from this. It was life-changing. But what really like changed me was like many moons later, I went to Indiana University, I graduated, and I had a chance to apply for a position that on the application was like, have you ever managed online communities before? And maybe Roy and Lori-Ann, you're making the connections that I did, that like what I was doing on MySpace was early like community manager skills, early social media skills, long before I even knew what it was called. Like it wasn't even called that, I don't think, back then. So it all started to click. And I started doing social media, freelancing, all this kind of stuff. And on top of that, I studied education in college, right? So I like love teaching. I love motivating kids. And so every one of my clients, they don't know they're getting this, but they're getting not only an accountability cheerleader to kick them in the butt, but they're getting someone to motivate them, to highlight their strengths, highlight what makes them special to the world. So all of that melded together got me to yoursocialmediasherpa.com, getting business owners clarity and accountability, doing their own marketing and making it something that they enjoy and not necessarily like feel ick over. So that's my joy and my fun. And that's how all of this came together.
That's cool.
Yeah. So thanks, MySpace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way back from the past there.
I know. This was like 2005-ish when all this started to happen. So yeah. I'm 30 now, for anyone who's trying to figure out my age. I'm 30 years old. I made it this far.
Well, I mean, a community builder.
Yeah.
You don't really think about that, but that's what all these Facebook groups and all these different groups are. They're just communities, right?
100%. They're 100%. I do. One of my clients, she's like a coach and she teaches marketing and business sales and all that kind of stuff. And so through her, I've also coached and also managed her community of like 200 plus kick butt consultants. And like some of these people I've known for like 2.5 years now, and just like watching them grow in their businesses and watching them talk about themselves and their stories just like melts my heart, because there's so much goodness that people are scared to put out there that somebody's waiting to connect with. And you both know that very well.
Yeah.
Actually,
even if you don't realize it yourself.
No, 100%. People need someone to be like, that's super interesting. We think things that are like everyday things, like we don't value them, but somebody's waiting to hear it. Somebody's waiting to find out that you can relate to their story.
Yeah.
So 100%.
When my daughter, she was born in 1993 and the internet was up then.
Yeah.
And what a difference back then though, because you got into these chats.
Yes.
Really, Facebook and all these social medias are similar to that, but except for they were just specific to one topic at that time.
The forums, right? The chat rooms,
Yeah,
all of it. AOL. Oof.
yeah.
Yeah.
CompuServe.
Bulletin boards.
Yeah.
That started out as bulletin boards. That's
Bulletin
how it first
boards.
started.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, that's going even way before, like in
Yeah,
1994, when I had my DOS based and little green.
Oh, you were that early on the internet? Like you were like
Yeah.
one of those people? Oh my gosh.
300
you.
baud. No one even knows what that means anymore. But I was so excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking to people around the world. I felt like in my little apartment, suddenly I was international. That was the first feeling,
Yes.
you know, it was like,
Yeah.
Yes.
Lorianne was out there with
100%.
2 rocks.
yeah.
I'm here.
That's so, but like what you're saying, Lorianne, is so true because that's what it felt like being a kid, like who I didn't find anybody that I could relate to in my periphery. Like the internet opens you up to people who you can relate to around the world. We see this now with like Clubhouse. I don't know how Clubhouse is doing. It's like kind of up and down, but there was another community very kind of early ahead of its time called Blab. And that's what it felt like. It was like this internet bar where you could meet people all over the world and make connections with them. And it was super fun because I could find people who were like me and who could relate to me. And for a kid who was bullied and teased and all that stuff, you know, it's hard to find somebody like that, even with like medical conditions too. Like I'm sure, you know, Lorianne, I'm sure you've been a lot of people who've been through some things that you can relate to, right? It's being able to be seen and heard and know people who've been in your shoes beforehand. And I love that. And it makes it a lot easier, and at least from a business perspective too, for someone to say, oh, you get me in particular. No one's looking for that generic financial planner, generic lawyer, generic whatever. Like you want to find someone who gets the thing that you need the most. And most people don't realize that, and they end up becoming boring and they don't share what makes them wonderful. So that's what I always have to say.
I like that. That's really nice.
Yeah.
It's like for me, the area of Dallas I grew up in, it was like 5 high schools. And so through Facebook, a lot of people have reconnected because we got this section of town that in this group of Facebook people, it's like 8,000 people. And from all different high schools, we've all got back together, so to speak. And it's funny because what I would call the beautiful people back in high school, all the popular people and all those people, you know, that you never would associate with because, you know, they were just above us. But now they're just, you see them and they're just like everyday people, just like you. It's no problem talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not that stigma you had in high school.
Yep. They had their moment, they peaked, and you know, we all have our moments, and it's funny to see where these people end up.
And we're all just, you know, just friends. I mean, we just
and you're friends.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. We don't have that little clique stuff like we used to.
Oh,
all the school rivalry, you know, everybody gets together and has a good time talking about, you know, all the rivalries and the people we knew and, you know, what happened to so and so, you know, so it's really been good.
You know, Roy, I can relate to that a little bit. So I went to like a very tight-knit school growing up, and some of the people that I went to school with, they're in Chicago, and one in particular was a bully that probably got bullied himself, and he was always making fun of me and teasing me and all that kind of stuff. Fast forward, like, I don't know, 7 years ago, we had an elementary school like reunion, and he's there and a few other people. There was like 30 people from my grade of like 120. And we had music on and we were at like a club here in Chicago and we were dancing together. And I'm like, this is better than like, I probably could use some therapy too, but like, this is better than therapy right now. I'm like, I get to dance with my bully. And funny thing is, I see him like randomly every year or so on the street somewhere. And he's always like, hi, Shaily, how are you? It's so good to see you. And I'm like, who would have called that? Like, what in the world? Now, some people are still not so nice, but like, here's one that turned out nice. I love it. So I'm glad you shared that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because same thing. You have a group of people and somebody that was kind of a snob or a bully, they'd come up and say, you know what? I'm so sorry the way I treated you back when we were in school. I was such a jerk. You know, it's not, I'm really apologize. I'm really sorry for being that way, you know, and, you know, that's huge to someone that went through that back in grade school or junior high or high school.
That would be incredible.
That is the beauty of social media too, though, because I moved 26 times.
Whoa.
And one of them, it's funny, my elementary / junior high school, because that was 5 years. You'd be surprised. You go through that. So I did grade 6 to grade 12 there. I'm still close to all those people, but there's some new people that I connected with that they were in 3 of my classes and I don't remember them. Because the guy, one of them, he said, yeah, he says, I always thought you were, you were so nice. And he says, but I super shy. So I didn't know, super shy guy. I don't remember him. I don't remember him. And I feel so bad because he was in a couple of my classes and I'm going, and I look at pictures, my class pictures, and he's there standing behind me in the class picture.
Oh.
And I just, because he was so shy, never talked to me. So I don't remember him. But now we talk all the time. So.
I love that. But see, that's the thing too. Like, this is another reason I fell in love with the internet, is that somebody that I meet at a networking event 6 months ago or a year ago or 5 years ago can now still be in relationship with me, whether that's through like professional stuff, like on LinkedIn, or even social stuff, right? It's that relationship would have been cut and never reconnected again to like everybody I've interacted with. I've got like, I don't know, 3,000 followers or friends or whatever on Facebook. I'm like, all this, like thousands on LinkedIn, whatever. Like those people can now have a relationship with me that could have never happened otherwise. And I think that scalability thing is not only good for social life, but I mean, I'm going to say a little bit for business too. And that's part of like my whole like unforgettable is that like, if you are putting stuff out at a semi-regular pace, people aren't going to forget about you because there's a statement that's worth making about your life and your experience and your hopes and dreams.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of problems with social media.
For sure.
But on the other hand, being able to connect with people from back in the day is really, really a great thing, I think.
100%.
I was against Facebook and all the MySpace, but then, somebody said, well, yeah, but if you don't get on it, you know what's happening to your kids, your grandkids, because, everything's on, not in the family. Because really, did you see so-and-so had a baby? Didn't even know they were pregnant, So once you got on Facebook, all the family stuff was easier to see.
100%. There's something where like it helps you stay connected, but then there's also that risk of, I see myself sometimes. I've spent more hours on TikTok than I probably should. It's true, but like I'm addicted, but it's for research, it's for work, it's for business. But like
Sure,
that's the other part of it, right? Is that we end up spending more time scrolling and not actually in person with people. And that's something that like I was secretly trying to get my mom to not get a smartphone so that she can preserve the old school social life, like is actually maybe sometimes better, but there are, pros and cons to it. I always say I'm on a tool called FocusMate where it's like co-working sessions on the internet. Highly recommend it for productivity. And I always tell people, there's a Facebook group. And like, I don't know, like 30% of the people will respond, I'm not on Facebook. And I always say, good job. You're living above the influence because they're probably spending time with people. Hopefully they're doing hobbies. They're hopefully doing something that's more impactful than scrolling endlessly for hours. So there is a drawback and I'm nervous for the next generation. Because I was in the middle of both a little bit, but like, what's the next generation going to do? Are they going to go hang out in person and like scroll on their phones? I know even my dad and his wife, like sometimes we'll go to dinner, they're on their phone scrolling and it's heartbreaking because it's like, we got to be present. So it's a really tricky dynamic, but we make it work.
Have you seen people sit at the table texting each other?
Right. 100%. My dad and his wife, like I've seen them do it. Numerous dinners. We'll go and pay for a dinner and like, they'll spend some of the time on their phone or making work calls. And I'm like, but like, we got to spend time together. It's really special. But I'm also like, what's going on Facebook right now? And it makes me worried. Like we're like, one of my favorite things about college, right? I have a friend, Jenny, and she chose to live across the hall from me. And just being able to knock on her door and be like, hey, like, I feel like that's probably what it used to be when everybody you knew was local. You could just like hang out on a weeknight and say hello. I'm like, now, like I have to schedule with someone. Hey, are you free? Like, if I'm bored right now, I don't know which of my friends are bored. I would love to hang out, but it's like, I got to go to your neighborhood or we have to plan things. And I'm like, COVID's probably not going to help with this, but mental health, of course, is going to be impacted by like not accessing the human relationships that probably were easily accessible like 10, 20, 30 years ago. So that makes me just a little nervous, but at the same time too, I'd be able to make friends like both of you, like via the tools of the web. So like you said, pros and cons. But the other thing I'm going to add, and this is a fun one here, is that the other part is that your idols are significantly more accessible now than they were before. I have a mentor, and he said he made a habit of like emailing people with Nobel Prizes and saying, hey, I would love to take you to coffee wherever you're in your city. This is like 40 years ago, right? And people would say yes to him, but I'm like, that's really hard to do. But nowadays, I'll give you an example. I was teaching a LinkedIn training where I empower like young women to talk about themselves and what makes them special and their stories on LinkedIn and beyond. And I said, hey, like, who do you look up to? And these are like young women who like tech a little bit. And they're like, oh, the founder of this app called House Party. I think it's actually going down soon, but the founder is like this cool kick-ass woman of color. I think she's like Southeast Asian, and this other student was also like Southeast Asian. So there was some personal connection there. And she thought in a million years, like, I'd never be able to talk to her. And I realized she was a little bit popular on LinkedIn, but like she was posting a lot on Twitter, and yet nobody was talking to her on Twitter as much as they were on LinkedIn. I said, if you go on there and you say a thoughtful thing to her on a semi-regular basis that is helpful to her, like, don't you think you have a shot at having some sort of relationship with her in the future? She's going to love on you because you've just made her day, because you're engaging with the stuff that she's put hard work and energy into. So that's the other part, is that you can access people that you never would have otherwise because of the web, which is super cool. Access your idols. So that's kind of fun. Yeah.
Back in the day, it was write a letter.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I did.
Oh, I'm sure you met some good people.
Dyke and that, and they sent me a signed picture. But back then, people would say, "How did you do it?" Because this was like years ago, and I said, "I wrote letters back then," and they would write me back.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, you say that. I know a guy that he collects books signed by the author.
Oof.
And that's what he does. He writes a letter and asks if they would sign his book, you know. And he sent one to Queen Elizabeth about some book anyway. And so the lady in waiting responded and said, I will be happy to sign your book. I'm the lady in waiting for the Queen. If you'll send it to me, I will sign it as the lady in waiting. And he did, you know. But like you said, he just writes these people letters. He said, I don't email them. I don't text them. I take the time to write them a letter, tell them who I am, you know, and you know, I enjoyed their book and I'd like for them to sign it if I send it to them, you know, and they'll respond. Because I've had them reach out to me, or they'll send me a letter, you know, signed by them. They probably didn't type it, but they did sign it. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I will say, yes, I am a millennial, but letter writing has not been lost on me. Like I think it's been really helpful to me. Can I share like a tool I use to do that?
Sure.
So one of the tools I use is called Felt App. And I wish I could be like an affiliate for them because I love them so much. And I've used them for like 3 or 4 years. I found them on Shark Tank like 100 years ago. And essentially what they do is you take, it's digital, but it's still handwritten. You take an iPad, right? And then you can hand write a note to someone. You can also type it too and put your own pictures in it. And it's really moderately priced. I think I paid like $5 or $6 a month on subscription to send 3 every month. And I sent them to clients. I sent them to people who've changed my life. I've sent them to celebrities. And it's a good accountability thing for me. And I was able to put real pictures, real stories, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember like I was on a Zoom call at like a networking event, and 2 people there I happened to have sent letters to over the years. And somebody mentioned something about letters, and both of them like held up their cards. They happened to have them nearby for some reason. They're like, yeah, Shaily sent me a card. And it was amazing to see how much smiles and impact that had. So that was a really great way to do it. I hate going to the post office, I don't even know where to find stamps. So literally just press a button on my iPad and then this gets mailed to them. And it's literally handwritten. Like, it's fabulous. So I highly recommend that as a way to be accountable, but also to like make it accessible and maybe a little bit easier to send.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Felt App.
So Shaily, how can our listeners reach out to you?
So the best way to reach out is you can, I'm all over the internet. If you stalk me, if you want to know if I'm good at what I do, there's plenty of places to look to find that out. One place that I always recommend is yoursocialmediasherpa.com. That's my more business end. But you can also look at my personal website, ShailyHakimian.com. But if you do go to my business website, yoursocialmediasherpa.com, I have access to, I know we like stories here. I have access to a collection of LinkedIn profiles that include tons of interesting stories about what makes someone special in their business, in their career, or whatever it is. So you can look at all of this collection. I constantly am adding to it to see what other people have shared online that makes them stand out and feel special. So that's my collection of my favorite LinkedIn profiles at yoursocialmediasherpa.com. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I got lots of nuggets on there too.
Great. Okay.
Thank you so much for being a guest with us. Today. Just Your
Absolutely.
enthusiasm is exciting. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure, for sure. This is me. This is who I am. I love hyping people up. I love motivating people. When I see people like both of you doing a lot of good work, sharing stories, all I want to do is keep amping up the good people. So that's what I'm here for.
Well, we really appreciate it.
For sure, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being our guest. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure, pleasure.
All right.